Good afternoon, everyone. We are still letting everyone file in. It's interesting how, even though nobody has to go through double doors physically, it seems like there's still kind of a bottleneck when they do open the virtual doors. People will file in. Because bandwidth is a thing, even virtually. I'm glad you're here. Appreciate your patience. I know we're a couple minutes behind. You should see my screen. Got the agenda up here, what we're going to go through. We've got 3 speakers today. So first, just welcome to the Nashville Tug. I think, let's see, this is our 13th virtual meeting. We've been a group for some time, well before COVID, but we started counting our virtual meetings once we went virtual. Today we have in our community conversations, Jessica Lyons to talk about Tableau for teaching. Cady. Tim Cady talking about Regex and Tableau, and our very own Eric Howard to show us how to use Tableau's relationship model. So this will be a great session. I'm hoping to learn a lot. I know I will. And let's jump right into our community conversation. Jessica Lyons is a teacher by heart and by trade. And let's open the floor to Jessica, and she can share her screen and what she has to say. Jessica. And you're on mute. So holding a moment to find the mute button.
There it is. Thank you.
Well done.
I think I need a t-shirt that says, "Where's the mute button?" Give me 1 second. Thank you all for allowing me to come today and invite me. I'm very passionate and so grateful for the opportunity to talk about Tableau community, especially the academic program. And one of the programs that we'll be discussing today is Tableau for teaching. As we're going through, if you have any questions, by all means, you may use the chat feature, or you may take yourself off of mute, and I'm happy to answer that question. This is conversational, so again, let's make it all nice and comfortable. All right, so Tableau for teaching. And so my name is Jessica Lyons. My information is on the slide, so it's just my name, Jessica.Lyons, Lyons at tableau.com. And I've spent the last 10 years of my life working in education and psychology, you name it, and I've kind of dabbled in it. My previous path has been anywhere as a psychologist, as a case manager, and then lots of interaction in education. And I've worked at about 5 universities in Illinois region. And you name the class, I pretty much have taught it. But just to talk a little bit about my why, like why did I transition into Tableau? My past, again, I worked with K-12 superintendents across the nation with NWA as a data coach, and I fell in love with data. It wasn't something that through school I automatically took until I went into stats, but I learned the power of data and being able to make decisions that way, and also being able to really use the data to really elevate a voice. And that's what I wasn't always finding in research. And so I just completely fell in love with data, love telling data stories, love talking about data as well. So here's a couple of quotes. I'm going to go through some slides just to kind of give us the norms. So the first one is the most valuable resource is no longer oil, but data. Here's a list of recruiters who rank data literacy as the skills in the highest demand for entry-level candidates today. As a matter of fact, I found out that recruiters are saying 40% of US candidates, it's really difficult for them to find people who are qualified in data literacy. So employers are desperate to find people with data-related skills. What I also did is I pulled just from LinkedIn And I looked at specifically when you're looking at Tableau, how many jobs there are. And this was pulled about 3 weeks ago. So as you can see in the United States, you have about 46,000. In the EMEA region, you have about 20,000. In the APAC region, you have about 16,000 jobs. So again, it seems like that data is really correlating and aligning. So what we're doing is we're feeding a data explosion with 90% of the world's data. And as you see, it's been an increase, and it's been increasing over time. So this new data intensive world can be difficult to navigate. So when we're looking at our data and we're looking at how much is needed and that we need more people to have data literacy and data skills, we think about why aren't we ready? And some of the questions that have come about is, our high school students, do we have data science in the current curriculum? We are having some initiatives that are doing that now, but that wasn't previously. So therefore, this is why we have so many skill gaps in students who are not ready. We also talk about equity. Underserved students pay the highest price for this. So when it comes to STEM jobs and data literacy, we do find that Black and Hispanic students have the largest disparities. And again, there's myriad of reasons. I won't go into the qualitative reasons, as I have my certificate in quantitative research. So with that being said, it does make us think about what we can possibly do. This again goes back to my why I'm here. So Tableau is on a mission to create a data literate world, and I am as well, which again goes back to my why. With that being said, Tableau for Teaching works with universities around the globe, and here's just some of them. Not all of them, but some of them, and in Australia as well. I'm going to stop here just to make sure that I can see the chat feature and things like that, and stop if we have any questions, because my favorite thing to do, I'm not the best presenter, but I love going live, and I think that will make me a little bit more comfortable and give you a chance to actually see, not only hear about our program, but actually navigate the website so that you will be able to take a look at the resources that we have. I'll stop sharing just for a moment. And I'll just check the chat box. Okay, awesome. And then what I'll do is I'll go live now into our demonstration. So Tableau for Teaching, what do we do? What do we provide? So first, just so you know, because we are on a mission of a data literate world, Tableau has invested into this, as they really do align with the mission and they want to help as much as possible. So for teachers who are not only just trying to learn Tableau on their own, but they also want to learn it to teach it, that is what our program is there for. So the most important piece that I love to let you know is it's complimentary. So every year you can get a Tableau for Teaching license for free. And then every year you can renew it as well. And so here's some of our software offerings. And so we have our instructor license, which actually includes Tableau Desktop, Prep, and the e-learning modules. And the e-learning modules, as I stated before, is so you can actually ramp up if you need any extra skills or any type of hindrances or skill gaps. That's what that e-learning is there for. If you ever need some refreshers, we have e-learning that is available to you for free. We give those resources so that you can go and you can ramp up with those. We also have the student bulk licenses, and with that comes the desktop and the prep builder. It doesn't include the e-learning, but this is more so for your courses. So example being, I was a psychology professor and I actually taught Tableau with my psychology course. So I did interdisciplinary studies with that. And so what I would do is I'd actually request a student license, and that would give my students licenses. I would add them to my course actually in there, and then they would have the licenses or they'd have access to my course licenses for the duration of that class. We also have lab bulk licenses, and these are for if you have any type of labs at all. So if you look in your libraries or your resource centers, these are wonderful to use because it's a one-to-many program. So you can get to about 2,000 activations with one computer. In addition, I just recently worked with the HBCU consortium. They have a virtual lab. Similar to California, Claremont schools, they also have a virtual lab. So that is possible as well. Why would someone want to use a virtual lab and use the lab resources? Well, I think we learned with the pandemic, we do have some inequities, some digital inequities. So you have the digital divide. Some people do not have their own laptops. So oftentimes they can borrow and they're not able to download software. So you can always give a lab license in that way. And then the next thing, as I segue to it, we also have Tableau Online. This is another thing, probably within the last 2 years before I joined Tableau, when I was teaching, I actually utilized Tableau Online. The reason for that is because it is a cloud-based reference and it works on Chromebooks and other devices. So what I can do is just literally subscribe my students to my course, and it gave them the option to actually put everything online. So it's that cloud-based, and it was much more accessible for many students. The last piece is we have research licenses, and our research licenses are used specifically for non-commercial academics. So as professors, you can also get a research license. And there's of course criteria that goes with it. Remember, we said that this is the mission side of it, so we do not charge. So we want to make sure that we are using it with fidelity. As I scroll down to the page, and by the way, I forgot to give the title of the page. It is just tableau.com/academics /teaching. Sorry about that. So that is our website, and you will have a document that I will share out so that you can have that information. The most important piece, especially with today's society, is this ready-made curricula. As a former teacher, you're doing a lot. So not only do we have service hours that we have to work, we also have to teach, and we're doing our own research. And so with that being said, we also don't have a lot of time to prepare and do so much prep work. With Tableau for Teaching, we have created ready-made curricula. Not only do we have our data literacy program and data literacy courses, but we also have other ready-made curricula as well that you have access to. So example being Data Literacy 1 course, Data Literacy 2. We have the Tableau Online guidebook, data visualizations, Tableau desktop training, data journalism, and social media access as well. The last piece that I will and talk about the community and how important it is, and then is our instructor resource page. With our instructor resource page, you will find all of the resources that help and support a community. So you'll be in touch with other professors as well, and there's information on that. And just to show you very quickly, just to save time, but I want to show you how valuable our community is that you can be involved in the Tableau for Teaching community group. As you can see here, we actually talk to each other all the time. We ask questions and they provide community. So they share syllabi, resources, and everything that you need. In addition, with the Tableau for Teaching, there's lots of community projects like Makeover Monday, Good for Social Justice. There's so many different things that people can actually utilize and support in our community programs. Workout Wednesdays was always my favorite one, and my students loved Workout Wednesday because they loved the feedback. So for time purposes, I will stop there. I will give a resource that will give more information if you ever want to get in touch. I am very passionate about this. I love talking about data, especially teaching and how you can utilize it in the classroom. I am happy to support. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. That I put a question in the chat regarding, are there any stipulations for that teaching license, so to speak? Like, do you have to be an employee of a college or a school, or?
Yes, you do need to be an employee at even if it is just a part-time adjunct, but they are looking for anyone who's working in a credit-bearing course. So long as you are a teacher teaching a credit-bearing degree course, you are absolutely open to utilize Tableau for Teaching. And again, long as you are continuing to teach, you can continue to renew that every year.
Got it. Cool. Any other questions before we transition to the next item on our agenda? All right. Thank you, Jessica. That was well done, timely and useful. Got some thanks in the chat too. Make sure you see those. Next up, we have Tim Cady. He's a VP of Data Visualization at JPMorgan Chase, and before that, tons of other things. I think our entire group of presenters today are polymaths, in my estimation, just multidisciplinary efforts and expertise. So really excited about our group, especially Tim, or including Tim. Let's welcome him to share about Regex today. Tim?
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Nick. Hi all, welcome. As mentioned today, we're going to talk about some of the basics of regular expressions, as well as when and how you would apply those in Tableau. Before we get started, I do want to throw out a kind of quick disclaimer. By no means am I a Regex expert. This is a skill that I've picked up during quarantine, really over the last year, as I've used it in a couple of my projects. And I thought it made a ton of sense to share with the community. So over the next 15 minutes or so, most of what you'll see is really meant to be an introduction, some real simple use cases, real easy to kind of get your feet wet and get started. So with that, let's do a quick slide going there. Quick introduction about me. As Nick mentioned, VP at JPMorgan Chase. I just joined their team in December. Before that, I led a COE at a financial services company for a few years prior to Chase. My current claim to fame, I guess, in the Tableau space is I co-lead the North Texas Tug. Been doing that for a couple of years, and that's a ton of fun. So a couple other, little bullets on there about me, but in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of skip through that, and we'll go straight to our agenda. All right. So as I mentioned, I prepared today's presentation with a mindset that regular expressions will be new for a lot of folks. In my years using Tableau, I've come across only a handful of folks who use Regex, let alone understand it, right? So I want to start kind of building the foundational building blocks, or talking to those at least, to help you better understand where to go with it. So first, what we're going to do is talk about what a regular expression even is and when you should use it. Oh, slide going there. Oh, I skipped ahead too far. Oh, it looks like my slide isn't working. But the rest of the agenda isn't loading. Oh, you can see the whole agenda, correct? Can you confirm, Nick?
Yeah, we see all the bullet points of introduction to Regex and putting it into practice.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. It just it didn't load on my second monitor here. So yeah, after the we talk through what a regular expression is, we're going to talk about some of the basic syntax. Then of course we're going to put it into practice with a couple of demos in Tableau. All right. So first, what is a regular expression? The simplest way to define regex is that it's a sequence of characters that define a search pattern. But a search pattern probably isn't something you use in kind of your day-to-day data analysis. So we need to figure out what that is first. So looking at that example, we're using an extract statement to identify the pattern in the column comment field. What we've highlighted there in the yellow, that's going to be our search pattern. Now, if you're seeing regex for the first time, it can definitely look a little overwhelming. Not to worry, we're going to come back, circle back to that example and go through it step by step to talk through exactly what each of those characters is and what it's doing. What I want to call out, though, is that example is a common search pattern for a street address. So you'll see there in some of our examples below, you want to return street address, a phone number, an email address. There are some pretty common and pretty general search patterns that you're going to leverage. What's important when considering whether you want to use regex or not is that the data or the substring that you're looking for has a consistent pattern, that it's going to be a similar set of characters, digits, letters, that sort of thing. So something like an email address, phone number, web address, URL, that sort of thing. All right, so now that we know what regex is, you need to know when you can use it. And really, it can be used in any kind of free-form text field, but it's particularly powerful when you're looking at unstructured data. Right, just because you can use it anywhere doesn't always mean you should. For example, based on the examples we've shown on the previous page, you might be thinking, hey, I can accomplish some of those things with, contains or split field. And you probably could, but that's not going to cover all your bases. As you see here in this next example, where contains might work for one thing, split might work for another, but rarely do they, again, cover all your bases like a regular expression statement would. So that's really the value of it. Things like a comment field, like what we have there, if you're trying to pull out the address, for example, regular expressions is probably the way to go over, nitpicking over a split or contains calculation. Okay, so let's circle back. I promised we would take a look at that previous example. We're going to break down piece by piece what that example was. So I mentioned it was an address, 21 Jump Street, for example. And you see there the example from the previous page. What we're going to do is go through that one character at a time. What I tend to find works really well when I'm trying to troubleshoot regex or trying to write my own statement is that I just do it positionally. I literally do it one character at a time, one digit, one letter, one word at a time to make sure I'm covering all my bases, like I mentioned earlier. So the first position there, usually addresses are going to start with some number, 21 in our case. So what we're doing there to find that number is we're doing a \d, which finds the digits, and we're giving it a range. So we know the digit could be at least one character. And just for the sake of our example, we're saying it's up to 5. Now you can extend that range if you see fit. But again, for the sake of the example, we're saying we're looking for an address that begins with digits 1 and 5, or 1 through 5. That \s is the next position in our search pattern. That's going to return a space, pretty straightforward there. The W's plus, so what that's looking for is an alphanumeric character, and we do not know the length of that alphanumeric character or how many characters are going to be grouped together for that word. So that's why we use the plus. Now, W by itself just searches out alphanumeric characters. When you have the plus, it tells the substring, or it tells the, the search pattern that we don't know exactly how many characters there are. A S again for another space. And then finally wrapping up with a W, another W plus. Maybe we'll put a period in there, which can act either as a wildcard, or we can comment, or we can make that period literal and find the period after street, for example, if it was abbreviated. So that's again just a circling back on the example, breaking that down piece by piece. What we're going to talk about next are some of the basic characters and syntax used in regular expressions. And some of these we already talked about from our example. \d is going to return any sort of number. If you capitalize that D, which, side note, regular expressions are case sensitive. You'll see that quite a bit throughout the next couple slides here. If you capitalize that D, it's going to return to you anything but a number. And it works the same way with spaces, lowercase and capital, or lowercase and uppercase rather, going to return to you a space or anything but a space. And the same thing with alphanumeric characters. Lowercase and uppercase do the opposite. Finally, a period, which you saw in our previous example, a period by itself is going to act as a wildcard. But a period preceded by a \, will make that a literal period. We're literally searching for a period in our search pattern. Now, what you may have mentioned, or what you may have seen, rather, excuse me, in our example, is we're making some reference to repeating patterns. So that was the plus, right? So we did a W plus in that example. That means we're looking for repeating alphanumeric characters that make up a word. So whenever we use that plus, we're looking for one or more instance of an alphanumeric character. If we were to throw a question mark in there, we would be saying, hey, I know an alphanumeric character does or doesn't exist. If it does, there'll only be one instance of it. And the asterisk is going to give us 0 more repetitions, very similar to the plus. And then finally, the squiggly brackets there, it's specifying an instance. So we use that with our D to find our number at the beginning of that example. And we said the specified instance is going to be either 1 character or 5 characters long. So those are some of the basics. We're going to cover a few more before we kind of jump into some of our examples. A couple other important ones to know. Whenever you, of course, Tableau has its own set of parentheses to use in calculated fields, but Regex has an additional set used in the capturing group. So that's, you'll see those kind of nested within the calculations as we move forward. The brackets represent a range of characters, and we'll talk more about that in just a second. And I mentioned a little earlier when we were talking about the period, using an extra backslash escapes a character or makes it literal. So if we were to want to find a $sign or a question mark, those are meta characters that are generally used in search patterns. But if we're literally looking for those characters, we'd have to precede it with an extra backslash. Going back to the range of characters, so the brackets that we just mentioned. You can look for a range of characters, whether it be A to Z, 0 through 9, as long as you contain them within those 2 brackets. So the examples I have there, lowercase a to Z, uppercase a to Z, of course, always case sensitive, and 0 through 9. Now we can, mix and match those how we see fit. If we were looking for characters that were from A to C, and then 1 to 3, right? We could combine those ranges together. It doesn't necessarily always have to be through A to Z. We'll use some of those in our example. So I just want to point out you can specify a range of characters within your search pattern. And a couple more. We're not going to use these today, but I just want to throw them out there. Should you decide to kind of continue learning regular expressions, there are quite a few meta characters to kind of get under your belt. The caret would tell your search pattern, hey, I know the substring starts with this, or the $sign would say, I know the substring ends with this, or the pipe. You could use that to say, if you were looking for bat or cat, you could say, hey, B or C on either side of that pipe. And the search pattern will return either one of those words that you used with the pipe. So there are 4 calculations, or 4 regular expressions, rather, that we can use in Tableau. And pretty straightforward. Regex Extract returns a substring that matches your capturing group. They're pretty straightforward there. Something you've identified in your search pattern, it's just going to return that substring. The regular expression match is essentially Boolean. It's going to give you a true or false. It's going to tell you whether something exists in your substring or not. Replace, as you might have guessed, this is kind of a find and replace on steroids. It's going to look for your search pattern within your string and then replace, whatever you've deemed it to replace. And then finally, extract int. So works very similar to extract, but let's say your search pattern happens or appears 3 or 4 different times within your substring. What you can do here is tell Tableau, hey, I want to return the 3rd instance of that search pattern. Now this might be relevant in URLs when you're parsing that sort of data. When the important thing is that your pattern's happening more than once, and that's when you leverage extract int. We're not going to cover that one today. That calculation can get a little tricky, and the data set I have doesn't necessarily support that. So, you know, we'll circle back on that one in the future. With that, I'm going to switch it up and we're going to go to a demo real quick. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to actually switch screens. So give me just a moment. Let's see here. Share screen one. And Nick, if you wouldn't mind, just give me a thumbs up that you can see my Tableau. Perfect. Need to pull up one more thing here. Forgot to pull up earlier. I just got a set of notes here I want to reference. All right, there we are. So our first example is going to be regex, or regular expressions extract. So the data set we're going to use for these examples is just Airbnb data for the greater Seattle area. So you see we want to extract, or in this example, we want to extract the suffix for the rooms URL. We maybe want to create a hyperlink within our dashboard to go directly to that, that page. But it looks like some of our links are concatenated together. Doesn't look like there's any real logic to it. Sometimes there's a user ID in there or user URL that seems to happen before and after the rooms URL. So we're going to use extract to pull out our rooms URL without having to do any advanced splits or anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and edit my extract. Oh, whoops, and it looks like it's already in there. But that's okay. I will talk through it. Let's get rid of this, and we'll talk through the calculation itself. So, as you might have guessed, I'm going to start with the regex extract function. I'm going to reference the field that I want. So in this case, length is what's on rows. I know that my string is always going to have a consistent prefix. So it's always going to be my www.airbnb.com. And here's where it gets interesting. So here's where I want to start identifying my search pattern, my capturing group. So I'm going to open up my parentheses for my capturing group. I know that URL, the first thing it's going to have is a /. So I'm going to make that literal with a backslash and say I want a / plus a range of A to Z, lowercase. And then I'm probably going to want another /. Right, so that's going to give me, what that will return to me here is that's going to give me rooms. I know that my Airbnb is my prefix. Then I'm going to look for a word after my Airbnb. And finally, I need to also specify that I want to return the room ID, which is a 4 or 5 character number at the end of that URL. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want a digit, \D. And I'm going to close out my capturing group, close out my calculation as a whole. And that's how I walk through that calculation. And I'm not going to apply this because I already have. I'm just going to go back in here. I notice that I could have just, I guess, hit apply, not a big deal. Okay, now, and we're going to go ahead and move this to text. And you'll see what that's done is regardless of how that string was concatenated, regardless of whether users falls first or rooms falls first, it's pulling out the pattern that matches what I've specified. So the rooms suffix, the Airbnb prefix, and it's giving me the room ID. So that's how you might use something like regex extract. Our next example is regex match. What we're going to do here is we have a list of cities and zip codes, but it looks like some of those zip codes might not be valid. So I might need to do some extra cleanup. If I wanted to create a real quick flag, relatively quick, to identify which zip codes I need to remove or clean. What I might do is something like this. Start off with my regex match statement. The field I'm looking at, again, is what's on rows. It's some sort of concatenation with city state zip. Here, I'm again going to open up my capturing group with a parenthesis. And I know what I'm looking for specifically is a valid zip code. So I'm going to use a range of numbers 0 through 9. And I want to find a 5 consecutive digits. So I'm going to use the squiggly bracket to tell my search pattern that I expect there to be 5 digits, or 5 consecutive digits within that range. Close my capturing group, close my overall calculation, and hit OK. I'm going to drag this up here. We'll go ahead and drag it to text as well. So you can kind of see real quickly, it starts to identify what's a valid zip code, what's not. Maybe we drop some trailing and leading zeros here and there. But that's a real simple example of the match functionality. Might not be the best use case because there are probably simpler ways to do that. But like I said, I just want to give you an idea of how they work, and we can grow from there. And finally, one last example, we're going to use regex replace. And what we have here is the description of all the Airbnb rooms in our data set. Now you see that they've abbreviated bedroom a lot, and maybe I wanted to show this description on my dashboard, so that's not ideal. Maybe what I'll do here is I'll come in, create one more calculation where we're going to say we want to replace the name. So that's name again is what we have. What do we have on rows? We know what we want to replace is some combination of the letters BDRM. So we're going to look for lowercase and uppercase of all of those, and that's our range. Then it's most likely going to have a space after it for whatever the following word is. And now we need to tell Tableau what we want to replace it with. So we're just going to say we want to replace it with the proper spelling of bedroom. And we're going to, oh, did I forget something there? I did. Forgot to close out my string there. So replacing with a proper spelling of bedroom with a space, just in case it's followed by another word. I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And what you'll see here is it's now, oh, that didn't work. What happens? Let me go back. And BDRM.
I wonder if the B's and the D's and the R's need to be in their own set each, or is that not how it works?
How do you mean? Oh, no, they can all exist within the same range.
Okay.
Like I mentioned, you can mix and match, and this worked 10 minutes prior to me joining the call. So live demos,
does regex P matter? Like I noticed in your slides, your references didn't have the letter P in the function name.
Oh, they didn't. That might just been an oversight on my end.
Okay.
I don't see what the issue is here. This is exactly how my example spelled out.
Oh, that space.
Oh, it might have been that space right there. Interestingly enough. So I had an extra space between my plus and my escape character. So you can see now what's being returned is the proper spelling of bedroom instead of BDRM. So again, just a real simple example of how the calculation works.
Do we need the plus? Can we?
I'm sorry, go ahead. Was there a question? No? Okay. So just some real simple examples of how you might be able to leverage or start leveraging some of these calculations. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch it back to my PowerPoint. And I will kind of give a shout out to some of the resources that I used when I started to learn. That Tablosaurus Rex, or excuse me, Tablosaurus Regex Unleashed video is from Tableau Conference 2018. If you're interested in learning more, definitely recommend that video. It's from one of my good friends, David Petranik, who is a solutions consultant here in Dallas. Super informative. They do a real deep dive into the topic, and it helped me a ton. Some other resources I kind of leaned on to put this presentation together, I've mentioned there. So I encourage you to go and check all those out. I will end it with any questions. If not, you can always follow up with me after the meeting.
Well done, Tim.
Were
And
there any questions? No questions in the chat?
Yeah, there is one question. Coming back to that bedroom example, Anuj wanted to know if that plus sign was necessary in the example you gave.
Yeah.
Or if it is, why?
Let me take a look. So if we removed it.
Yeah, I guess trying and see is just one way to do it, isn't it?
Yeah, so if we removed it, you can see what that's done in my return result is, not replaced BDRM. All it's really done is append to the existing abbreviation. So what we're telling our search pattern is I want that range of characters, BDRM plus a space. It's kind of funky and actually kind of tough to explain. This is the result without the plus. This is the result with the plus. You can see that once we add that plus, it's basically including that in our search pattern. I think without the plus, it was not. So I hope that is helpful.
See, there was another question I had asked, but you answered it in the course of your presentation.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I'm always, this is a topic I'm still learning plenty about. Like I mentioned, it comes in real handy when you're focusing on unstructured data. So if anyone has any questions, you can always feel free to reach out and we can chat about it.
Cool. And I think Jessica is still here. I think for all of our presenters, we would love a copy of the PowerPoints. I think that's
absolutely. I can provide this. So the actual workbook
resource.
itself. Oh, I'm sorry.
Nope, go ahead. You're good.
The actual workbook itself, I have up on my Tableau public, so you can kind of go in there and play with the regex calculations. But yeah, I can provide the PowerPoint as well.
Cool. Well done.
Thank you.
Virtual applause all around. All right. And we're tracking great on time. So Eric, you are up. Really excited for this topic and to hear your voice. It feels like it's been a while.
All right. Thanks, Nick. And thanks everyone for joining us today for this Nashville Tableau users group. I've worked in IT my whole life, and I've been using Tableau since version 7, so you can say I'm experienced. I'm currently the manager of data analytics for the section of surgical sciences at the Vanderbilt University Medical Center. When I'm not working, I like getting outside and exploring and just doing adventures. Getting outside and taking a few deep breaths has definitely helped me over the past year, because a year ago, we were the tip of the spear and the point of the knife on getting everybody home and working and doing all this remote stuff. So before I get started, I am assuming that you already have a basic understanding of data warehousing terminology. I'll be talking about dimensions and facts, or as Tableau calls them, dimensions and measures. as I go through this. If you have any questions, please hold them till the end, because I hope to answer most of them as we go along. So with that, let's get started. The basic building blocks of the atomic relationship model are your entitlements table, your core dimension table, and your extended dimension and fact tables. The entitlement table and the core dimension table create the physical nucleus of the model, and the noodles are the logical relationship that joins our extended dim and facts to that core. So to sort of go over the cookbook steps of building this atomic relationship model, what you need to do is spend a good bit of time organizing your source data into core dims, extended dims, and facts. And then you want to organize those core dims on the physical layer canvas in Tableau. If you're using security in your model, you'll join your entitlements table to that union. And then you'll go and noodle those extended dims and facts to the union using a data source and transaction ID field. Okay, so one important thing to note is each row needs to have its own unique ID. I call it an atomic model because you want to have the most granular level data possible available. It doesn't mean you can't put summary data in your model. I have, but those rows also have to have a unique transaction ID to do that noodle join. When you're showing people the data that makes them think and ask questions, they're always going to ask what's behind those numbers. So if you have those detailed level data in your models, you can jump in and biz on the fly and answer those questions for them. So this is a look at my production model. I have 8 tables union together. I have a table of providers that I use as my entitlements table. In the medical world, providers are doctors. For me, they're surgeons. And then I associate those extended dims and facts to that core dimension union. My current model, I checked before this afternoon, is 2.5 gigs extract with about 37 million rows of data. And I run several different dashboards off of that one core model. Today, I'll be demonstrating a subset of that. I'll have 3 tables. I have revenue, cases, and visits that I will join to another provider dimension. And then I've got the extended and dims and facts that I will noodle to that on the logical layer. So as I said, my demonstration model, well, here's my source data. Back when I started, I was using business objects to run reports monthly and export CSVs. And then my ETL process was to combine those CSVs into an extract that I would then consume in Tableau. Today, I'm lucky enough to have the SQL queries behind those reports, so I can pull that data straight from our master, which is Epic. And the Epic uses what they call the Clarity database, which is running on a SQL Server. As I said, I've anonymized the demo data. So this is the Tableau prep process that I use for creating that anonymized workbook. It's basic substitution of patient MRN and provider ID. All the patient names have been substituted with Disney characters. All the monetary values have been randomly shifted by plus or minus 10%. And all the dates have been shifted by plus or minus 10 days and a set number of years. The assumption that I'm going on behind the data, I pulled a month's worth of trauma patients. In the healthcare industry, trauma is a loss leader. So they always lose money, but they always make a lot of other departments a lot of money. So we're going to look at this 1 month of patients over a whole year's worth of data. So it's the year following that month. And we're going to see how much money is made in the other departments based on those 1 month of patients. Okay, so that's the introductions. Let's take a look at the basic building blocks of the atomic relationship model. As I mentioned, we have core DIMs that you want to organize your information into core DIMs, extended DIMs, and facts. I add a source column to my data to say what type of information it is. Then I identify what that row ID is for each of those types of information. And then you'll see I've got core DIMs, the extended DIMs. If you only have one fact, you can combine your extended DIM and fact into one table to noodle to the core. And then I ran into a situation where we were filtering on some dimensions that if I had all the facts in one table, it removed some of the information that I wanted to get to. So I've had to come up with a facts pivot that has fact name, fact value that I then pull out in Tableau so that I don't filter out some of the information that I want to get to. So let's take a look at what that means. By now you're probably scratching your head going, what? So let's look at the Excel tables. This is what I am pulling into the Tableau demo today. So I've got my provider DIM, my core DIMs, my revenue extended DIMs, and my revenue facts, my OR case core DIMs, my extended DIMs, and then the visits, core DIMs, extended DIMs, and facts. If you look at each of those individually, this details tab is sort of what I get from that original business objects query. I get the transaction ID. All these rows that I use as my core DIMs are in blue. All the rows that are extended DIMs are in orange. And then my facts are in green. So this is sort of the table that I would get out of business objects. Since we're unioning data together, all your core DIMs have to sort of match in name and type and organization. So they have to be in the same order. So I've got those for my OR cases. All the core DIMs match. You don't have to have everything filled out. If you don't have information, you can null it. And for some things, I go back in and backfill. But anyway, you want to organize all that data again into core DIMs, the extended DIMs, and with this one, it's the extended DIMs in fact. So hopefully that sort of gives you an idea of what that organizing your data means. That's probably the biggest step in this whole process. When I run my SQL queries, this is an example of the whole query. I've got the two rows for the data source and transaction ID at the top. And then I've got the core DIMs grouped together, the extended DIMs grouped together, and then the facts grouped at the end. I can create a view for each of these three types and then just pull that portion to then feed into Tableau. Here's an example of that SQL pivot if you want to do that sort of thing. SQL does a pivot of my data in seconds, where trying to do it in Tableau prep took 15 or 20 minutes. So for me, it was well worth doing in SQL. So again, going back over those cookbook steps, you want to organize your source data into core DIMs, extended DIMs, and facts. Union your core DIMs on the physical layer canvas. Join the row and row level security entitlements table to that union, and noodle your extended DIMS to the union with that data source and transaction ID. So now let's take a look at actually building that. We're going to build this in the demo model. I've got the revenue core already out on the physical canvas, and then I'll add the others to it and build the rest of it. So let's show you how that works. Here's the revenue. It's already been parsed, so it knows what to do. Oh, no, see, I'm already, this is the logical canvas. We've got to double click into the physical canvas. We'll drop that on as a union. Then we'll drop the visit cores on as a union. We can go view our union. There's those 3 tables all put together. I'll take my provider DIM and drop it on the table. Then I will join that on provider ID and provider ID. So that's our physical layer put together. Now I'm going to take the extended DIMs and noodle those together. I'm going to choose the data source and data source. And then I'm going to add another layer for that transaction ID and the transaction ID. And then our noodle will be happy. I'm going to do this several more times for the revenue extended DIMs. Data source, data source. Transaction ID, transaction ID. And close that. And then I'm going to go to the revenue facts. Data source and data source. And transaction ID and transaction ID. And our visit DIMs. It's very repetitive. And finally, the last one. Oh, I overwrote that one. You got to close it out or it doesn't go to data source. It really doesn't matter which order you do that in, whether it's the transaction ID or data source. They just both need to be in the noodle. And then we'll drag out the pivot facts. And this one already does the data source. And when I do the transaction ID, I'm going to get an error because it thinks Excel. That thinks that's a number. So I'll go over here and fix that as a string. And now that noodle's happy. And that's basically how you build the model in one quick step. So let's go back and run through that cookbook again. By this time, it'll hopefully make some sense that you organize your source data into core DIMs, extended DIMs, and facts. You union your core DIMs on the physical layer canvas. And then if you need security, you join your entitlements table to that union on the physical layer. And then you noodle your extended DIMs to the union with that data source and transaction ID. So that is what I call the atomic relationship model. This is an example of what Power BI calls a data model with row level security. You can see their row level security works on these tables, but doesn't work on those tables. I will say that row level security works throughout my model completely. So I'll stand behind that. But the proof is in the viz. So let's take a look at how you can actually use this and query information from all of those tables with one viz. So one thing I've learned over the past year is you can create a calculation and then dump a bunch of your calculations into that, and then just drag and drop those over onto your data pane. So I've already dragged my date calculations out, but now I'm going to drag over my facts for the visits. Oh, don't want that. You just want the name and the calculation. I'll drop it there. I'll grab this one and drop that there. And I've already have these all dropped in there, so I can close that out. And now I'll drop the total visit counts on my viz. And you can see that I've got from that original month's worth of trauma data, cardiac surgery, had Cookie Monster come in, had one case in the OR that was $14,000, and then he disappeared and never came back again. If we look at general surgery, Doc had 2 cases, and he had $15,000 and 1 follow-up visit. And if we look at the trauma unit itself, Kermit the Frog had 7 surgeries. He had $78,000 worth of charges, and he heals quickly. He only came back for 1 follow-up visit. So that is querying all the information across all those different tables. So to finish up, I've got use these resources to build this presentation. The Tableau data model is out on Tableau's site. And then another good read is Relating Your Data. I did a presentation on Tableau row-level security in our February presentation. If you want to learn more about those entitlements table and adding security to your data model. And then I've got this presentation out on Tableau Public, and you can go download it with all the slides and all that data so that you can practice that yourself if you want to try it. So with that, that is the end. And I'll hand it back to Nick and take any questions.
Well, thanks, Eric. I don't know. I think I'm just going to say I was a little overwhelmed. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not sure what a core dim is.
It's a simple, well, the core DIMs are the things that you run through all your model. For us, core DIMs are patients, providers, and departments. So we want to look at everything by patient, provider, and department, and they're in all of our data.
Right. So with like your transaction ID, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's an actual transaction. That's not like a made up ID you did to make each of your rows unique.
For some of the data, it's an actual transaction ID. For my budget data, it's just the index of the SQL table.
I see. But so between your data source and your transaction ID, so your transaction ID is really your primary key of the different dimensions. Yep. And you had to union all your dimensions together at least one way.
So you just create one big stack of all the tables that you're going to build your visualizations off of. And that way you can add information from any of the tables on your visualization.
Yeah, it's taken me a sec to get my mind around. I guess I'm visualizing it's just this huge tree trunk that's every possible row, but it's only 2 columns.
Yep. So when relationships came out, I took my 8 tables and tried to do a relationship build with them, and I couldn't get them to join because it just didn't work.
Right.
So this allows me to, look at, in my production model, I've got payroll data. So we want to know how much we're paying a doctor versus how much he's bringing in revenues. So with this kind of model, I can pull those numbers from each of those and get that number in
Gotcha.
a calculation.
And then when you connected both data source and transaction ID, that was serving as your composite key. That, like, it was like if you have a join and you join on two fields, both of these have to match for the join to
Right. If you
to
could
match.
guarantee that your transaction IDs were unique throughout the whole data set, you wouldn't need the data source name. But the data source name allows you to have non-unique transaction IDs across the whole data set.
Right. Or just a guarantee, like a catch-all, just to.
Yeah. For me, like I said, I build multiple visualizations off of this. So some of my visualizations don't need all the data. So I can use that data source field in my data source filter and just pull the tables that I want to use in that visualization. And again, that sort of pares down the amount of information I'm bringing into my visualization.
That's really cool. Any other questions from anyone on relationships and core DIMs? And let's see, it's a bit of an outlier question. Slim's asking what the typical tech stack is in healthcare data, because you mentioned SQL, SAP, Tableau Prep, and desktop.
You know, we're getting right now for our business, we've got Oracle as our data warehouse. We have SQL Server as our electronic medical record source of truth. We have spreadsheets for budgets. So it's just all over the place. We're getting ready to move to Azure. So probably by this time next year, I'll be pulling stuff from Azure Databricks instead of Clarity. So it just really varies. Yep.
I think all of those you mentioned, I've seen in the healthcare space too. I've been in various companies in healthcare IT and analytics. I would say that you're sometimes at the mercy of whatever company your company has acquired. So sometimes you're supporting Oracle just because that's what you bought, or you're an Oracle shop and you're supporting SQL because that's what somebody in finance decided to purchase.
It was a cheaper option. Yep.
Right. Or just that's what the company you acquired is using. So you have to come up with ways to keep those in sync or communicate. And I have seen SAP or business objects still, and a lot of Excel.
Yeah. Still get a lot of Excel.
Yep. Well, we have time for the quiz.
Yep. Are we ready to go?
I think so. Little surprise for everybody. And speaking of putting the prize in surprise, we do have a prize. Is that right, Jim? Are you still with us?
Yes, we do. We have a
All
gift
right.
certificate for the first place finisher.
Okay. And
So
if
what
you
is your
haven't,
real name?
yeah,
Your real name.
Yes, I'm allowing you to put your real names in. I'm only randomizing the answers this time. So
yep. And as the screen share indicates, if you go to kahoot.it and put in that somewhat lengthy PIN number, you can participate. This is a great opportunity to get a $25 gift certificate. There's not a lot of people attending this time. So yeah, if you don't participate, Heather's just going to win by default. There we go. Let's get some people playing, and I'm gonna do the same.
I'll give you a heads up. All these questions came from the Atlanta Super Tug when they were playing Jeopardy with Francois. So if you attended and paid attention, you know all the answers.
And have a decent memory.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I attended, I paid attention, and I still get 2 or 3 questions wrong every time. So
All right. I think we've got about half the people present.
Well, the first question is, you can go ahead and enter and join. The first question is, all the answers are correct. We're just taking a little poll, and then we'll get started with the rest of it. So, have you been vaccinated for COVID-19? Yes, no, I'm naturally immune, maybe, or hell no. There's no wrong answers here. Just I gave an extra long time for everybody to answer so that people could still join a little bit later. As soon as everybody answers, we will move on.
You sure?
I
there's no
personally
wrong
got
answer?
vaccinated on Christmas Day, so yeah, I was one of the first.
Wow, that's a polar question.
Yeah. All right, next. Which release allowed a user to bring data together through relationship noodles? Four correct. Levantre is in the lead. In the box integration with Mapbox was first released with this version of Tableau. 18.3, 19.2, 10.0, or 10.5. All right, 19.2.
19.2.
And we have a new leader, Kaz, taking the lead. All right, what year did Tableau launch Tableau Online? 2013, 2014, 2010, or 2015?
I think it was 2104.
Yeah, it's way in the future. Oh my goodness. Yes, 2013. All right. And whoa, new leader. We're having some swaps today. What year did Tableau debut public with the slogan, "Do it in public"?
That's when Tableau was a smaller company.
Yeah, I wonder if that person still has their job. 2010. 2010 was the year. Again, we're consistently 4 people correct. Heather is consistently one of them, I think. All right, which release introduced animations when the user interacted with a dashboard? Oh, cool, my graphics are animating. It didn't do that in the demo. So 2019.2, 2019.4, 2020.2, or 2020.1. All right, 2020.1 with 5 correct answers today. And a new leader. Way to go, Becky. Which version allows dashboards to be authored on the web?
Authored as in created from scratch?
Edited on the web, yes. You do editing online. Yep. This is editing in server. So 8.1, 9.2, 10.0, or 10.5. That was a hard one. Yeah. And now, which version of prep introduced joining of spatial objects? Put one out there for all you prep users in the house. 2019.2, 2020.4, 2020.1, or 2019.1? And the correct answer is 2020.4. They just released it. All right.
I call them preppies.
Preppies. I'm a prepper. I'm a prepper. All right. Well, Levantre jumped back into the lead. I hope I said that right. With 4 out of 8. Levantre, if you will email, in the chat, send a direct message to Jim Diener with your email. He will email you the link for the $30 gift certificate. And so, yeah, congratulations. And with that, it's back to you, Nick.
All right. Thanks, Eric. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Hopefully my color commentary wasn't too distracting. All right. So now this is the wrap up portion. Jim, your community
Wait, I have
spotlight.
Yeah, I'll take it over in a second. I just want clarification on something. Levatre, you are the winner. Somebody has just emailed me an email address, but it's not Levatre.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
Is
sorry.
that the same person?
That's my email address. I just have two different Zooms, and I logged in on the other one today.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. My only concern was it was Dick and he was out to get the 30 bucks himself. I just wanted to make sure that that you were going to get the gift certificate and he wasn't. So I got you covered there.
Thank you.
I only did that one time, Jim. Jeez. It's well, you
Yeah,
have the floor.
But this time I caught you.
The floor is
I'm just-
yours.
I'm just going to share my screen. It's probably going to be easier that way.
Okay.
I'm just going to drop that in place. And
We see your
oops,
settings.
that's not what I wanted to present. Hang on just a second. I'm sorry. Maybe I ought to have you share your screen because I don't.
Okay. Let's see. You've got
No,
the slides. I see it.
Yeah, I've got it here. I hope
Okay.
everybody can see this slide. I'm sorry, I'm a little disjointed. Yeah, I just wanted to go over a few announcements. If you're not tied in to the Tableau healthcare link, here's the link, and here's where you go to get tied into that group. I mean, there's so much healthcare going on in this area that that's a link that you really should be aware of. And I know they do a lot of good work out there specific to your business. There is a second users group, and that's the analytic users group. And that's a global, that's a worldwide users group. And monthly, they have tremendous presentations at that users group. I presented there myself. I wasn't one of the best by far. There were some really good ones there. But that's a users group. If you're into analytics at all, this is where you can go and learn new things and develop your skills. It's also a great group to network with. Job seekers, Tableau still has openings. Go out to careers at Tableau if you're interested in a new position, or maybe just getting out of school, or you know somebody who's just getting out of school. Tableau is hiring. I looked this morning, and I think A.O. Smith still has this business analyst position open here in Nashville. And if you're looking, I would suggest that you go on out there and take a look out there. I want to thank everybody who attended the 5 sessions I did for 0 to Zen. I have the workbooks and the recordings are all available now. Got a lot of requests for that. I'm just going to take you out here real quick. If you go out to my blog, and this is my blog, Jim Daner 2, blogspot.com. I just posted this morning. It's just a quick synopsis, and all the links here are active and they're on one page. The session recordings are here, and also the links to the workbooks that we use. The links to the workbook come off my Tableau public site. The recordings are the Tableau YouTube site. But all the links are there, and they're all in one place. And a little synopsis of what we covered in the 5 sessions. So go on out there and help yourself to that material. That's why we have it out there. Now, next month, coming up in June, we're going to have a session on the pros and cons of using Tableau Online. And we're still trying to talk the speaker into it. And I think the guy we're trying to talk into is still on the line. We're still trying to talk the speaker into putting together a presentation. Then we've also got a presentation that I think you'll like. It's on sports data modeling. And Kate Brown is going to do that. And if you know Kate is her background is Tableau Prep, and she was part of the prepping data group. So not only will we be able to see, some exciting data, sports data is always exciting, sports data being modeled, but we'll also get to see how it's done in Tableau. Nick, I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to turn it back to you.
Great. Thank you, Jim. I have a couple of announcements or things to call out. One is around speakers and topics. Actually, both are around speakers and topics. So first of all, we do have a speaker form that you can fill out. So if you would have a topic you'd like to cover, something that you've done and are proud of and think others might benefit from knowing or seeing done, just like you've seen today, we'd love to have you on. We like having these heavy hitters come in, but we also want to hear from our own people, right? We want, just like we had with Eric, we want Nashville locals sharing what they know and have learned. Now I'll put that in the chat here in a moment. And on the heels of that, if the thought of presenting anything at all, even though you might have an idea, just scares you to death, I'm thinking about starting a group strictly around presenting information in general. I'm a member of Toastmasters, and it's a speaking organization, just public speaking, getting over your fear of public speaking. And I think a club for technical presenting would be awesome, but that's just me. In order to start a club, we need 20 people. So I'm wondering if there's any interest for that amongst you and others. If there is, I'll put my email in the chat and we'll see if that's a good idea or not. You can vote with your email address. So I need a moment to find those links, or that link, and put those both in the chat. But I just wanted to put that out there for anybody. I would ask you to speak up now, but that's kind of the point, right? Is if you're freaked out by public speaking, I'm not going to ask you to put yourself out there right now. The whole idea of Toastmasters is gently facing that fear. So that is it for my two contributions as far as announcements.
I've got one request. If anybody is sitting out there and they'd really like to see a presentation on something that we haven't covered in the 13 virtual meetings, I mean, if you have a desire to say, hey, look, I want to know about this, shoot us a note. Tell us what you want to hear. We can find somebody to speak on it. But if you have a need, we want to help you out. You can send it directly to me, or you can send it to Nick or Eric or any one of us. You can send it directly.
And let's see. Yep, I'm going to end the recording now. Thank you all, and please stick around while I get those links and such. And feel free to speak amongst yourself, but the formal official session is over.
Now the recording's off, I'll say I've got a job position in